Picture this. You drag yourself home at midnight after a brutal 12-hour shift, crawling through ceiling spaces, your knees screaming, clothes reeking of sawdust and electrical burn. All you want is to grab a beer and check on your sleeping daughters. But blocking your entire driveway sits a spotless white Lexus SUV with vanity plates, PRNCPL1, angled so perfectly that you can't even squeeze past on the grass. Under your windshield wiper, a note in prissy handwriting. Maybe now you'll learn some respect for your neighbors. A concerned citizen. I'm Marcus Brennan, 45, union electrician in Millbrook Heights, Connecticut. Single dad to twins Emma and Sophie, 16, raising them in the same house where my mom Eleanor raised me after my dad walked out. 3 generations of working folks who never bothered anybody. But apparently, somebody decided this blue-collar family needed education. What would you do if some entitled stranger blocked your driveway to teach you a lesson? Drop a comment with your location, because my revenge involves strategic landscaping, legal warfare, and a public meltdown that destroyed her entire career. Let me paint you the picture of Millbrook Heights. This Connecticut neighborhood started as working-class heaven: electricians, plumbers, teachers, nurses. The kind of place where Mrs. Hernandez's garlic and cumin drifted over backyard fences every evening, mixing with the diesel fumes from work trucks and the sweet smell of Mr. Hudson's prize tomatoes ripening in July heat. My mom Eleanor bought our modest Cape Cod in 1978 for $32,000. Raised me there alone after my dad decided fatherhood cramped his style. She worked double shifts at the textile factory, calloused hands that still managed to braid my sister's hair before school. Taught me that honest work and treating people right was worth more than any trust fund. When she passed 3 years ago, I inherited more than just a house. I inherited the responsibility to keep our family rooted. Emma and Sophie were 13, still raw from their mother Rebecca moving to California for some tech job that paid triple what I make. This house became our life raft. But neighborhoods change faster than you'd think. Property values tripled as young professionals discovered our charming community, with its 30-minute commute to Hartford. Most old-timers stayed put, but new money brought new attitudes about who belonged where. Enter Dr. Patricia Whitmore, stage right with a superiority complex. 8 months ago, she bought the renovated Victorian across the street for $400,000, 13 times what Mom paid. Patricia's 52 elementary school principal turned real estate investor with more opinions than a town hall meeting. Short blonde bob, always camera ready, designer blazers even for grocery runs, drives that white Lexus like she's reviewing troops. The sharp click of her heels on concrete became our neighborhood's new alarm clock. That condescending principal voice she wielded like a weapon, speaking to grown adults like we were misbehaving children who'd forgotten our place. 3 weeks before the driveway incident, Patricia knocked on my door at 7 p.m. The twins were upstairs wrestling with homework when I opened it to find her standing there, arms crossed, wearing that artificial smile principal's perfect before dropping the hammer. "We need to discuss your truck," she announced. Not hello, not how are you, straight to business. My work van sat in my own driveway where it belonged. Legitimate electrician's vehicle, company logos, proper permits, everything legal and necessary for feeding my family. "What about it?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "It's lowering property values. Commercial vehicles don't belong in residential neighborhoods." Her voice dripped with that toxic sweetness of someone accustomed to compliance through intimidation rather than reason. Here's the thing about bullies with degrees. They think fancy words make their prejudice sound reasonable. I explained I'd lived here 30 years. The truck was legally parked on my property. I needed it for work. Even offered to move it farther up my driveway if it bothered her sensibilities. Patricia's mask slipped faster than a wet bar of soap. "Some people," she said, letting each word land like a gavel, "need to understand that neighborhoods have standards." The way she emphasized "some people," I'd heard that coded language before. Usually from folks explaining why working families didn't really belong in nice places, despite building and maintaining those very places. Patricia's harassment campaign launched like a military operation. City complaints about my mom's 30-year-old flower beds. Health department visits over a bird bath, fire inspectors checking my perfectly legal driveway for imaginary violations. Every official found nothing wrong, but I lost $400 in wages taking time off work to deal with her manufactured emergencies. Then came Facebook warfare. Patricia created Millbrook Heights community standards, invited everyone except families she'd classified as problems. Posted photos of my work truck with academic-sounding complaints about commercial intrusion compromising residential character. The artificial sweetness of her perfume lingered in my doorway after every conversation, like chemical flowers masking something rotten underneath. Even the sound of her car door slamming carried an entitled finality that set my teeth on edge. Last week's neighborhood improvement meeting at her house said everything. Everyone invited except the working families, the Hernandez clan, Mr. Hudson. Yes. Topic: maintaining community standards. That's code for keeping certain people in their place. So there I was at 11:47 p.m. on that Tuesday, staring at Patricia's white Lexus blocking my driveway like a middle finger made of German engineering. The note under my windshield wiper written in that prissy handwriting principles perfect for parent conferences. Maybe now you'll understand how your truck makes the rest of us feel. Some people need to learn respect. A concerned neighbor. I'm dead tired, my back screaming from threading wire through a ceiling that apparently hadn't seen an update since disco was cool, and all I want is to check on my sleeping daughters and grab a beer. But Patricia's decided tonight's the perfect time for my behavioral correction. My first instinct? March across the street and bang on her door until she moves the damn car. But that's exactly what she wants. Hand her the ammunition to call cops about the aggressive blue-collar guy terrorizing the defenseless professional woman. I've seen this script before. Instead, I called the non-emergency line, keeping my voice calm and reasonable. Officer Martinez showed up 45 minutes later, his flashlight cutting through the darkness as he surveyed the scene. Decent guy, his brother Tony's in my union local, but his hands were legally tied. Since it's on private property and technically no laws are broken, he explained with genuine sympathy. It's a civil matter. Best bet's probably a tow truck. Randy from Randy's Recovery arrived 20 minutes later, diesel engine rumbling like an old bulldozer. He took one look at the pristine Lexus, then scratched his graying head with the resigned expression of a man delivering bad news. "Sorry, Marcus," he said, unable to meet my eyes. "Lady called me first about an hour ago, offered to pay me double my usual rate not to tow her car tonight. I got kids to feed, you know?" That's when it hit me. Patricia hadn't just blocked my driveway on impulse. She'd planned this whole thing, complete with preemptive tow truck bribery. The woman was playing chess while I was still figuring out checkers. But two can play strategic games, and I remembered something from my union days about property rights. Back when we fought the city over our meeting hall, our lawyer taught us that Connecticut lets property owners landscape right up to their exact boundary lines without neighbor permission, as long as nothing permanent crosses into someone else's space. Knowledge that was about to become Patricia's expensive lesson in assumptions. Instead of escalating, I called Jake Kowalski, related to the neighbors, who runs weekend landscaping to supplement his plumbing income. "I need a favor," I told him, "and I need it to look absolutely gorgeous." At 6 a.m. sharp, Jake's truck rumbled up our quiet street loaded with premium mulch, rich topsoil, and beautiful cedar landscape timbers. The smell of fresh earth and wood shavings filled the morning air like nature's own cologne. Mrs. Hernandez appeared with steaming coffee, her curiosity clearly piqued by our dawn construction project. "Beautification day?" she asked with a knowing smile that suggested she'd witnessed the previous night's automotive hostage situation. Even Mr. Hudson wandered over with his ever-present measuring tape, nodding approvingly as he examined our materials. The man's got an engineer's soul, probably couldn't resist a good construction project. We spent 3 methodical hours building raised flower beds that just happened to form a perfect horseshoe around Patricia's trapped Lexus. 18 inches of clearance on all sides, I measured twice with Mr. Hudson's precision tape. Not a fraction of an inch less, because the last thing I needed was any legitimate complaint about property damage. The landscaping looked like something out of Better Homes and Gardens. Professional-grade construction, perfect drainage, even decorative stone borders. If Patricia wanted neighborhood standards, she was about to get them in spades. At 9 a.m. precisely, Patricia emerged for her morning routine. Bathrobe, coffee mug, probably planning to back out and drive to whatever earth-shatteringly important principal meetings awaited her busy schedule. Instead, she discovered her $400,000 status symbol, surrounded by what looked like a magazine feature on stunning suburban landscaping. The shriek that erupted could have registered on seismic equipment 2 counties over. "This is vandalism!" she screamed across the street, gesturing wildly at our beautiful handiwork, like we'd committed some horticultural war crime. "This is harassment and entrapment." I was watering the freshly planted petunias with a garden hose, maintaining the calm demeanor of a man simply tending his property. "Just improving the neighborhood, Patricia. Thought you'd appreciate how this increases all our property values." Watching her try to measure the clearance with a kitchen yardstick while muttering calculations about minimum vehicular access requirements was better entertainment than anything Netflix offers. Emma and Sophie had pressed their faces against the upstairs window, shoulders shaking with barely suppressed laughter at the spectacle unfolding below. The community reaction told the whole story. Mrs. Hernandez brought fresh coffee and quietly observed that our flower beds looked absolutely professional. Mr. Hudson spent 20 minutes examining our drainage system with genuine admiration. The Kowalskis slowed their morning dog walk to complement our weekend project. 3 days after the flowerbed incident, my peaceful Tuesday morning shattered with an official knock that made my coffee taste like bitter regret. City code enforcement stood at my door at 7:30 a.m., clipboard in hand, and the apologetic expression of a man forced to investigate obviously bogus complaints. Anonymous tip about unpermitted landscaping, Officer Williams explained, clearly embarrassed. Protocol says I gotta check it out. 20 minutes later, Health Department. Report of standing water breeding mosquitoes. The inspector couldn't find so much as a puddle, unless you count the tears of laughter from my neighbors watching this bureaucratic circus. An hour after that, fire department roared up with full sirens because apparently my flower beds now constituted an emergency access obstruction. The fire chief took one look at my perfectly clear driveway and muttered something unrepeatable about wasting taxpayer resources. Each inspector found absolutely nothing wrong, but I lost $400 in wages taking unpaid time off work. The irony burned worse than touching a live wire. Patricia was costing me money while complaining about my commercial disruption of the neighborhood. After the third official shook his head and drove away, I remembered something from our union's contract disputes. Filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the city, because anonymous complaints aren't really anonymous when you know how to dig. FOIA requests cost $5 and reveal everything: who called, when, and from what number. The results arrived faster than I expected. All 3 complaints originated from the same phone number at exactly 6:47 a.m. that Tuesday morning. Patricia's cell phone registered under her full name and address. So much for her concerned citizen anonymity. That's when Ralph Torino's words from a union harassment seminar came flooding back. Connecticut prosecutes vexatious litigation, meaning repeatedly filing false complaints can backfire legally on the complainant. Patricia was essentially building my court case for me, one fake emergency at a time. Instead of confronting her directly, I went full documentation mode, installed a discreet 4-camera security system with cloud storage and night vision that could capture a mosquito's license plate. The smell of fresh electrical work filled my garage as I wired everything to professional standards, skills Patricia clearly didn't appreciate, but that would protect my family beautifully. Emma helped research property boundary laws while Sophie organized our growing evidence file with the precision of a future lawyer. Discovered our property survey from Mom's estate was far more detailed than Patricia's recent purchase documents. My driveway extended 3.2 feet farther than she realized. Knowledge is power, and ignorance is Patricia's specialty. I created a spreadsheet tracking every harassment incident: dates, times, inspector costs, lost wages, complaint patterns. Each entry included photo evidence and witness statements from neighbors who were developing serious Patricia fatigue. Then she escalated to social media psychological warfare. Patricia launched Millbrook Heights Community Standards on Facebook, carefully excluding families she'd classified as problems, while inviting everyone else. Posted photos of my work truck with pretentious captions about commercial intrusion compromising neighborhood aesthetics and vigilant property value protection. The group attracted 7 whole members, including 2 people who joined specifically to screenshot her posts and share them in other local groups with crying, laughing emojis. Digital karma at its finest. Mrs. Hernandez delivered the verbal knockout punch. Marcus has lived here longer than most of us. His family belongs here. Mr. Hudson's response was even better. Just the laughing emoji, repeated 6 times. Sometimes less really is more. Emma and Sophie suggested fighting fire with Facebook Fire. We created Millbrook Heights, the real story, featuring before and after photos of our landscaping improvements, glowing neighbor reviews of my electrical work, and 3 decades of family photos from block parties and community events. The contrast was devastating. Patricia's page radiated exclusion and complaints. Ours showcased belonging, improvement, and actual community spirit. But Patricia's next move crossed into dangerous territory that made my blood pressure spike higher than a bad electrical connection. She filed a formal Better Business Bureau complaint against my electrical business, claiming unprofessional conduct and neighborhood disruption activities. The complaint became public record instantly, potentially poisoning my professional reputation with complete fabrications. Here's what Patricia didn't understand about lying in official documents. It creates evidence trails that attorneys absolutely love. She'd never hired me for any electrical work, my contractor license was spotless, and my business reviews were excellent. This constituted textbook defamation and systematic harassment of a licensed professional. Ralph Torino's office the next day smelled like coffee and leather-bound justice, with walls lined with legal victories that gave me hope. He reviewed my evidence folder with the satisfied expression of a prosecutor who'd just been handed a slam-dunk case. "You've documented a clear harassment pattern," Ralph explained. "False complaints, surveillance, workplace intimidation, defamation. But here's my advice. Don't file yet. Let her keep digging deeper. People like Patricia always escalate when initial tactics fail. The more rope you give them, the more spectacularly they'll hang themselves." Meanwhile, Patricia grew bolder with territorial games. Started parking her Lexus precisely at my property line every few days. Technically legal, but obviously intentional, like a passive-aggressive dog marking territory. My response? Parked my work truck to perfectly block her street view from her front window. Completely legal, absolutely infuriating, and psychologically brilliant. The photography war intensified. Patricia began documenting my property from her yard, eventually standing in my actual driveway with her phone camera, muttering about evidence collection loud enough for neighbors to hear. Patricia's next move crossed from petty harassment into potentially life-destroying territory. And it happened while I was doing the most mundane thing imaginable, helping Sophie balance chemical equations. Thursday evening, 6:47 p.m. The smell of garlic and oregano from my spaghetti sauce filled the kitchen as Sophie wrestled with molecular formulas that reminded me of electrical circuit diagrams. Emma was upstairs video chatting with friends, and our house hummed with the comfortable chaos of normal family life. Then sirens shattered our peaceful evening like glass hitting concrete. 2 police cruisers screamed down our quiet street, red and blue lights strobing across neighbors' windows like some twisted Christmas display. Officer Martinez vaulted out of the lead car, hand on his radio, scanning my property with the intensity of someone expecting to find an active crime scene. "We got a 911 call reporting threats and aggressive behavior," Martinez announced, his voice carrying that sharp edge cops develop when they think violence is imminent. "Someone said you were threatening them with tools, waving a crowbar, and shouting about teaching them a lesson." My stomach dropped into my work boots. Patricia had just weaponized the police against me. I stepped onto my front porch, hands visible, while my daughters pressed their faces against the living room window like spectators at the world's worst reality show. Half the neighborhood materialized from their houses, Mrs. Hernandez clutching her phone, Mr. Hudson frozen mid-garden pruning, the Kowalskis with their dog suddenly very interested in our front yard. "I've been inside making dinner and helping with homework for the past hour," I told Martinez calmly, though my heart was hammering like a jackhammer on overtime. "But I've got security footage if you need proof." The beautiful thing about truth is its simplicity. The terrifying thing about lies is how much damage they can do before truth catches up. Martinez's expression shifted as recognition dawned. This was his 3rd visit to our quiet street for Marcus-related emergencies, and the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. We reviewed my security footage on the kitchen laptop, timestamp clearly showing me stirring sauce and helping with homework at the exact moment Patricia claimed I was outside threatening her with construction tools. "This is crystal clear," the younger officer muttered, shaking his head. "Shows you never left the house. Camera covers your entire front yard." That's when Patricia's voice carried across the street like fingernails on a chalkboard. "Those cameras are probably fake. He deleted the real footage." She stood in her front yard in full principal mode, blazer, arms crossed, voice pitched to carry maximum authority. But instead of commanding respect, she looked like someone having a very public nervous breakdown while half the neighborhood watched. Officer Martinez walked across the street for what appeared to be an increasingly uncomfortable conversation. I watched through my window as Patricia's animated explanations gradually deflated under the weight of actual evidence. Her gestures became more frantic, her voice higher, her credibility evaporating in real time. The conversation concluded with Martinez returning to my porch, clearly irritated. "Filing false police reports is a misdemeanor," he announced loudly enough for Patricia and every neighbor to hear. "She's getting a formal warning. Next time there will be charges filed." As the police cars disappeared down our street, the aftermath felt like the moment after lightning strikes. electric tension slowly dissipating, but everyone still processing what they'd witnessed. Mrs. Hernandez approached with the determined stride of someone who'd reached her limit. "This stops now," she declared firmly. "I watched everything from my kitchen. You were making dinner, not threatening anyone. I'll provide written testimony if needed." Mr. Hudson nodded gravely, still holding his pruning shears like a tiny sword of justice. "Truth always wins," he observed with his characteristic understatement. "Lies create too much paperwork." Even the normally quiet Kowalskis lingered during their dog walk. "Patricia's behavior is frightening the whole neighborhood," Mrs. Kowalski confided. "This isn't normal anymore. This is obsession." That evening's phone call to Ralph Torino felt like reporting a jackpot to a lottery official. False emergency reports, documented harassment pattern, workplace intimidation, he cataloged with obvious satisfaction. "She's building our case better than we could ourselves." "How much worse can this get?" I asked. Ralph's chuckle held zero warmth. "People like Patricia always have one final card to play, usually the one that destroys them completely." The next morning delivered Patricia's most desperate move yet, and her biggest mistake. Anonymous flyers appeared in every neighborhood mailbox except mine. Professionally printed warnings about declining property values due to commercial vehicles and safety concerns regarding unlicensed contractors. The documents looked official enough to fool casual readers, but contained two fatal flaws that would become Patricia's legal undoing. First, every claim about my business was verifiably false. My electrical contractor license was spotless, fully insured with stellar reviews. Second, placing unauthorized materials in federal mailboxes constitutes mail tampering, a crime the Postal Service prosecutes with surprising enthusiasm. Mr. Hudson, blessed with 30 years of Postal Service experience, recognized the federal violation immediately. "Mail tampering very serious," he explained while photographing the flyers. "Postal security cameras everywhere, catch everything." Within hours, he'd reported the incident to the local postmaster. Postal security cameras, as it turns out, capture everything with the clarity of a nature documentary, including footage of Patricia creeping through our neighborhood at 2:17 a.m., stuffing illegal flyers into federal mailboxes like some deranged, reverse Santa Claus. While researching property boundaries for my fence installation, I stumbled across a document that made my hands shake and my morning coffee taste like liquid victory. Buried deep in Patricia's property purchase records, publicly available through the county assessor's dusty filing system, was a legal bombshell that changed everything. Patricia's deed contained a specific covenant requiring neighborhood consultation and collaborative discussion before filing any official complaints against adjacent properties. Her mortgage lender had demanded this unusual restriction as a loan condition, specifically because the Victorian had a documented history of neighbor relations issues with previous owners. The beautiful irony hit me like a perfectly timed electrical connection. Every single complaint Patricia had filed, code enforcement, health department, fire department, Better Business Bureau, violated her own legally binding agreement. She'd been systematically breaking her mortgage covenant while targeting my family for imaginary violations. Ralph Torino's voice practically vibrated with excitement when I called with this discovery. "Deed covenant violations can void homeowner legal protections," he explained, and I could hear papers rustling as he took notes. "But Marcus, why would any lender require such an unusual restriction? There's more to this story." That question led me to Mrs. Peterson's cozy living room, where the smell of lavender and old furniture polish created the perfect atmosphere for explosive revelations. The elderly woman who'd sold Patricia her house served tea with shaking hands, but her memory was razor sharp. "Patricia promised during negotiations to be a respectful neighbor committed to community harmony," Mrs. Peterson recalled, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd been thoroughly deceived. "She specifically said she wanted to contribute positively and work cooperatively with existing residents." But the real bombshell came next. Patricia's loan required the covenant because her credit investigation revealed a lawsuit for systematic harassment of neighbors in West Hartford. The mortgage company classified her as a community liability risk and demanded legal restrictions to protect surrounding property values. Mrs. Peterson provided copies of Patricia's written promises from the closing, documents that now read like evidence in a fraud case. The woman who'd lectured me about respect and standards had essentially lied her way into our neighborhood. Phone calls to West Hartford confirmed my darkest suspicions. The Morales family, Roberto operated a small landscaping business, described an 18-month nightmare nearly identical to ours. False complaints, workplace harassment, social isolation campaigns. They'd eventually sold their house at a loss, exhausted by the legal battle they couldn't afford. "She targeted us from the first week," Rosa Morales told me, her voice still carrying old pain across the phone line. Said our work vehicles were compromising neighborhood character, called our customers with lies, filed bogus complaints, tried to destroy Roberto's business license. We had 2 young kids and couldn't fight anymore. The pattern was crystal clear and absolutely chilling. Patricia systematically hunted working-class families, particularly those with trade businesses or commercial vehicles. This wasn't personality conflict. This was calculated economic discrimination with a multi-jurisdictional paper trail. I pulled our neighborhood vehicle inventory for comparison, and the discrimination became undeniable. Patricia had never complained about the Kowalski's boat trailer, Dr. Martinez's medical equipment van, or the Hudson's massive weekend RV. Only blue-collar work vehicles triggered her community standards outrage. Ralph's legal assessment completely transformed our strategy. We're not defending against a neighbor dispute, he explained during our emergency strategy session. We're prosecuting a serial harasser with documented discriminatory targeting patterns. This is civil rights territory now. The power shift felt like flipping a circuit breaker and watching darkness become light. For months, I'd been playing defense against Patricia's attacks. Now I held documentation proving she'd violated her own legal agreements while systematically targeting families like mine across multiple communities. Patricia had tried to teach me a lesson about knowing my place. Instead, she was about to learn some very expensive lessons about property law, harassment statutes, and the dangerous consequences of underestimating working families who document everything and know their rights. The fence project suddenly represented much more than privacy. It was my first offensive move in a legal battle where I now held every advantage. Sunday evening transformed my kitchen table into a war room that would have impressed Napoleon. The smell of fresh coffee mixed with the rustle of legal documents as Ralph Torino spread his files like a general deploying battle plans. Jake Kowalski sketched fence designs on napkins while nursing his 3rd cup, and our surprise military advisor, Mr. Hudson, quietly revealed 30 years of structural engineering experience with the casual air of someone mentioning they could juggle chainsaws. Proper construction standards very important, Mr. Hudson observed, adjusting glasses that had probably seen more blueprints than most architects. Also, psychological warfare through superior craftsmanship. Emma and Sophie functioned as our intelligence unit, organizing evidence with the ruthless efficiency of future Supreme Court justices. Every document was categorized, time-stamped, and cross-referenced in a system that would have made the FBI jealous, and probably offered my daughters full scholarships. Ralph outlined our legal strategy with surgical precision. 3-pronged attack, comprehensive harassment complaint, restraining order based on stalking behavior, civil damages for lost wages and emotional distress. Connecticut's Neighbor Relations Act allows expedited proceedings when systematic harassment is documented, something Patricia has kindly provided in abundance. I remembered reading about that act during our union's legal training sessions, where we learned that workers have more rights than most people realize when facing intimidation. The law specifically protects against economic harassment targeting trade professionals, exactly what Patricia had been attempting. Mr. Hudson's engineering analysis of my fence permit revealed Patricia's fatal tactical error. She waited until after legal comment period to file objections, he explained with the satisfaction of someone who'd caught a chess opponent in checkmate. No legal standing to stop construction now. Very poor strategic timing for someone who claims to be intelligent. Jake's landscaping expertise added delicious irony to our defensive strategy. We'll plant flowering berry bushes along Patricia's side of the fence, he suggested, with a grin that could have powered Christmas lights. Beautiful, fragrant varieties that happen to be aggressively thorny. Completely legal beautification that discourages close-up surveillance photography. Mrs. Hernandez arrived with tamales that filled the kitchen with the scent of cumin and cornmeal, along with an organizational offer that made my chest tight with gratitude. I'm coordinating neighbor testimonies, she announced with the determination of someone who'd reached her limit. Patricia's behavior affects all of us. Time for this community to speak with one voice. The documentation upgrade that followed would have impressed intelligence agencies. Emma created cloud-based evidence archives with military-grade security, while Sophie organized witness statements into color-coded legal categories. Every harassment incident was cataloged with timestamp verification and photographic evidence. Ralph calculated financial damages with accountant precision. $1,847 in documented losses from inspector visits, legal meetings, and lost wages, he enumerated. plus emotional distress and business interference that could multiply exponentially in civil court. Patricia's workplace harassment alone violates multiple federal labor protections. The timing choreography required precision worthy of a Swiss watch. Complete fence construction first, Ralph advised. Demonstrates commitment to legal resolution rather than vigilante escalation. File harassment complaint immediately afterward. Patricia's reaction to the fence will provide final evidence of unreasonable obsessive behavior. From my union days, I remembered how property law favors families with long-term investment over newcomers trying to change established neighborhoods. 45 years of my family maintaining and improving this property created legal standing that Patricia's 8-month residency couldn't challenge. Jake coordinated the fence installation like D-Day planning. Saturday construction with full neighborhood BBQ, he announced. Mrs. Hernandez handles food coordination. Mr. Hudson provides engineering supervision. Kowalski's manage logistics. We're transforming fence building into a community solidarity demonstration. Dr. Kim Valdez, Sophie's school counselor and longtime family friend, provided psychological insight over wine and strategic planning. Patricia exhibits territorial aggression combined with economic prejudice, she explained. Bullies escalate when sensing fear, but make critical mistakes when facing unexpected organized resistance. Emma's suggestion for documenting the fence-building day showed strategic thinking beyond her years. Community support demonstrations matter in harassment cases, she reasoned. Photos showing neighborhood unity directly contradict Patricia's narrative about you being a disruptive problem. Ralph prepared multiple legal responses for every possible Patricia reaction. Complaint escalation gives us harassment evidence. Property damage becomes criminal vandalism. Intimidation provides stalking grounds. Every response option strengthens our position while weakening hers. The Union Electricians Association offered legal defense funding, while neighbors contributed $847 in 2 days. Money we didn't need, but solidarity that meant everything. Jake's crew volunteered weekend labor, transforming our fence project into a community investment. By evening's end, I'd transformed from reactive victim into strategic prosecutor. Patricia had tried teaching me about knowing my place in her vision of neighborhood hierarchy. Instead, she was about to learn that working families who document everything, understand their rights, and build community alliances are the most formidable opponents imaginable. The fence installation would represent more than privacy protection. It would be our community's declaration that belonging isn't determined by income, vehicle type, or social status. Patricia had picked the wrong family in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. Her education in respect was about to begin, and tuition would be expensive. Patricia's desperation reached nuclear levels Friday afternoon when neighborhood gossip revealed our weekend fence-building plans. By 3:17 p.m., she'd filed an emergency injunction claiming my fence would obstruct emergency vehicle access and create catastrophic precedent for unauthorized property encroachment. Language so dramatic it sounded like we were planning to build the Great Wall of Connecticut. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 4 p.m., exactly 1 hour before I finished installing emergency lighting systems at Hartford Hospital. Ralph met me at the courthouse steps, his tie askew and briefcase bulging with hastily assembled evidence, while Jake's crew waited in the parking lot like a construction army ready for battle. Walking into that marble-columned courtroom felt like David approaching Goliath's legal team. Patricia commanded the plaintiff's table in her most intimidating principal blazer, flanked by Robert Finch, a silver-haired attorney whose hourly rate could probably finance a small country's infrastructure. But Patricia's desperation had created a fatal error in target selection. She'd specifically requested Judge Henderson, unaware that he was the father of a student at her elementary school. The conflict of interest forced immediate recusal, and our case got reassigned to Judge Maria Santos, a former prosecutor famous for dismantling frivolous lawsuits with the efficiency of a demolition expert. Patricia's legal theater was worthy of Broadway. Finch unveiled a sophisticated PowerPoint presentation featuring aerial property photos, municipal code citations, and dramatic warnings about systematic neighborhood destabilization by commercial vehicle operators. Patricia testified with practiced authority about being targeted for harassment because she dared to maintain professional community standards. The performance was polished, expensive, and would have convinced anyone who didn't know she was a documented serial harasser. Ralph's response carried the devastating simplicity of absolute truth. He calmly presented Patricia's deed covenant violations, her multi-jurisdictional harassment history, and security footage showing her obsessive surveillance behavior. Judge Santos reviewed each piece of evidence with the laser focus of someone recognizing courtroom manipulation. Then our surprise witness delivered the knockout punch that drained Patricia's face whiter than courthouse marble. Mrs. Peterson's elderly voice crackled through the phone speaker with the authority of someone who'd witnessed Patricia's deception firsthand. She confirmed Patricia's written promises to maintain neighborhood harmony and revealed the mortgage covenant requirements that Patricia had systematically violated. Your Honor, Mrs. Peterson testified, she specifically promised during closing negotiations to work cooperatively with existing residents and contribute positively to community relations. Those were her exact words. During the sidebar conference that followed, I watched Finch's body language transform from courtroom swagger to professional panic. After reviewing Ralph's evidence folder, which apparently contained legal dynamite, he announced his client needed immediate reassessment of her legal position and requested postponement. Translation: even expensive lawyers abandon ship when it's clearly sinking. Judge Santos delivered the kind of judicial smackdown that makes law students take notes. The emergency filing appears potentially frivolous and designed to harass rather than seek legitimate relief, she stated for the permanent court record. The defendant's fence permit was properly obtained through legal channels. Future abuse of emergency procedures will result in sanctions and potential attorney fees. Patricia sat paralyzed as her expensive legal strategy imploded in real time, while I walked out of that courthouse feeling like I'd just won the legal lottery. Saturday morning arrived with October air so crisp it made fence building feel like celebration. Our neighborhood BBQ launched at 8 a.m. with Mrs. Hernandez's breakfast burritos filling the street with the intoxicating aroma of chorizo, peppers, and community solidarity. Mr. Hudson appeared with surveying equipment that looked more precise than NASA instruments, and families I'd only waved to for years showed up with tools and infectious enthusiasm. 23 neighbors participated in what became less fence construction and more community festival. Patricia watched from her upstairs windows as her complete social isolation became painfully visible, her white Lexus sitting alone like a monument to failed bullying, while my property transformed into the neighborhood's beating heart. The construction documentation Emma and Sophie captured would have impressed documentary filmmakers. Every shot showed proper permits, professional workmanship, and overwhelming community support, visual evidence that Patricia had targeted the wrong family in the wrong neighborhood. Mr. Hudson's engineering supervision elevated our fence from functional privacy to neighborhood showcase. Jake's crew installed professional drainage, reinforced foundation posts, and decorative caps that made the whole project look like it belonged in Home and Garden magazine. Patricia's surveillance behavior escalated to public spectacle. She positioned a camera in her upstairs window to document our construction, apparently oblivious that my security system was recording her obsessive photography of my property and guests. Several neighbors pointed and whispered about her obvious desperation. During lunch break, Mrs. Kowalski dropped a bombshell that made everyone's tamales taste better. Patricia approached me at Stop and Shop last Tuesday, she revealed. Offered to coordinate neighborhood action against commercial vehicle proliferation. I told her Marcus belongs here more than she does. Mr. Hudson's afternoon discovery provided delicious irony. Patricia's driveway encroached 14 inches onto city right-of-way, making her precious Lexus parking technically illegal for 8 months, while she complained about my perfectly legal work truck. Sometimes karma comes with surveying equipment. By 4 p.m., our 8-foot cedar masterpiece stretched along the entire property line, gorgeous, professional, absolutely legal, and completely blocking Patricia's surveillance operations. The neighborhood erupted in applause that probably registered on seismic equipment. Patricia's evening meltdown confirmed her complete psychological unraveling. She appeared at the fence line at 8:03 p.m. with measuring tape and camera, frantically documenting every post while muttering calculations loud enough for neighbors to hear from their porches. The week after our fence victory unleashed Patricia's most dangerous escalation yet. A sabotage campaign that crossed from petty harassment into felony territory. Monday morning, I discovered my garden hose transformed into a colander, punctured with dozens of precision holes that turned watering into an expensive sprinkler malfunction. Tuesday brought deflated work truck tires, not slashed, which would have screamed vandalism, but slowly deflated with the calculated stealth of someone avoiding obvious criminal charges. Wednesday's discovery made my hands shake with rage. My fence gate, carefully locked each night, hung open like a middle finger salute to security. The latch showed fresh scratch marks from repeated tampering, and security footage captured Patricia testing the mechanism at 3:17 a.m. with a flashlight, looking like a suburban ninja with a superiority complex. But Patricia's workplace attack represented her most catastrophic miscalculation yet. She called my electrical contractor company, claiming serious safety concerns about an unstable employee and demanding immediate relocation of commercial vehicle disrupting neighborhood standards. The complaint landed on Pete Kowalski's desk, my supervisor and neighbor Mrs. Kowalski's son, who'd grown up watching my family contribute to this community for 30 years. Pete's warning call made my coffee taste like liquid anxiety. Some psycho called demanding we fire you for being a neighborhood safety risk, he explained with barely controlled fury. Marcus, this woman's trying to destroy your livelihood. That's crossing every line that exists. Patricia's online assassination campaign proved even more sinister and systematic. She submitted fabricated reviews to contractor websites claiming I damaged client property during electrical installations and demonstrated threatening behavior toward female homeowners. Every review was complete fiction. She'd never hired me for anything, but potentially devastating to 20 years of reputation building. The beautiful irony of Patricia's desperation was how thoroughly she documented her own federal crimes. My company's fraud investigation revealed she'd called pretending to be 3 different previous customers, using suspiciously identical language patterns and phone numbers that traced directly back to her address. Corporate security flagged the coordinated fake review campaign within 6 hours. Then, Local 90 entered the battlefield, and Patricia learned that attacking union members' livelihoods is like declaring war on a very organized, very protective family. Tommy Reyes, our business agent, knocked on Patricia's door at 7 p.m. for a neighborhood consultation about her concerns regarding union workers. Tommy's the kind of diplomat who settles labor disputes through calm conversation backed by 30 years of collective bargaining experience and zero tolerance for economic intimidation. I would have paid premium cable rates to witness that conversation. Patricia's panic response confirmed how completely she'd overextended her harassment campaign. She frantically attempted to withdraw workplace complaints and delete fake reviews, apparently not understanding that digital evidence is forever when federal investigators start collecting screenshots. Ralph's legal team had preserved everything: phone logs, email records, and witness statements documenting systematic economic warfare. The restraining order filing that followed read like a prosecutor's dream case. 47 pages of documented evidence spanning 4 months: surveillance footage, false police reports, workplace intimidation, property vandalism, and economic harassment. Each incident was time-stamped, photographed, and corroborated by neighbors who'd transformed from neutral observers into protective community allies. Mrs. Hernandez coordinated 8 families to provide sworn statements about Patricia's behavioral escalation. Even the quietest neighbors submitted formal testimony describing discriminatory language and systematic targeting they'd witnessed. The community had collectively reached its breaking point with Patricia's reign of suburban terror. Court-ordered psychological evaluation revealed Patricia's mental state like opening a psychiatric textbook. Dr. Angela Martinez interviewed both parties plus multiple witnesses, producing a preliminary assessment that Patricia exhibited obsessive targeting behavior with discriminatory motivations requiring immediate professional intervention. Patricia's desperate attorney shopping became neighborhood entertainment worthy of reality television. 6 different law firms declined her case after reviewing Ralph's evidence mountain. She finally hired a solo practitioner who specialized in hopeless causes, the legal equivalent of hiring a used car salesman to perform brain surgery. Discovery period unveiled Patricia's employment record like opening Pandora's box with a law degree. 3 formal parent complaints at her elementary school described discriminatory treatment of working-class families and inappropriate socioeconomic bias toward students from trade families. The school district was quietly investigating her professional conduct, and our harassment case provided additional ammunition for their review. Despite escalating attacks, I maintained perfect composure that probably drove Patricia insane. Regular work schedule, normal family activities, community participation, demonstrating stability while her behavior grew increasingly public and erratic. Friday night delivered Patricia's most brazen criminal act yet. Motor oil poured across my driveway formed words that would have made longshoremen blush, creating a slippery hazard that could have seriously injured my daughters. Security cameras captured a hooded figure at 2:47 a.m., face obscured but body language unmistakably Patricia's. But here came the mini twist that sealed Patricia's fate. Police lab analysis revealed the motor oil's synthetic blend matched samples collected near her garage during a routine property inspection. Detective Wilson realized they weren't investigating random vandalism. They were documenting a systematic criminal harassment campaign with DNA-level evidence. Local reporter Jessica Hudson picked up our story after reviewing public court documents, framing it as economic discrimination against working families. The article emphasized community solidarity versus affluent harassment, drawing regional attention that would soon destroy Patricia's professional reputation completely. Social media explosion transformed our neighborhood dispute into a statewide conversation about class warfare and harassment accountability. Comments overwhelmingly supported working families while condemning Patricia's behavior, creating public pressure with serious professional consequences. The smell of legal victory mixed with motor oil fumes as Patricia's world began crumbling around her expensive priorities. Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp at Hartford County Courthouse. The restraining order hearing drew a crowd that transformed the normally sterile courtroom into something resembling a neighborhood uprising. Judge Santos presided with the granite authority of someone who dismantled every type of harassment case imaginable, while Patricia sat ramrod straight in her most intimidating principal blazer, flanked by her desperate solo practitioner who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. The gallery behind me resembled a union rally crossed with a community festival. Mrs. Hernandez, Mr. Hudson, the Kowalskis, and 6 other neighbor families filled wooden benches like my personal jury. Tommy Reyes and 2 local 90 business agents represented organized labor solidarity, their presence sending an unmistakable message about protective brotherhood. Local TV cameras, permitted due to public interest, captured everything for what would become viral evening news footage. The smell of courthouse coffee mixed with nervous energy and anticipation as Ralph launched his evidence presentation like a prosecutor seeking the death penalty. 47 minutes of methodical destruction, security footage showing Patricia's 3 a.m. prowling sessions, false police reports, workplace intimidation campaigns, property vandalism, and stalking behavior. The PowerPoint presentation was surgically devastating in its comprehensive thoroughness. Your Honor, Ralph stated with courtroom authority that made my chest swell, this represents systematic harassment with clear discriminatory targeting based on socioeconomic status and employment classification. Patricia's defense reeked of desperation disguised as victimhood. Her attorney painted her as a concerned professional woman protecting community standards and victim of reverse discrimination by organized labor intimidation. The argument was polished, expensive, and completely contradicted by video evidence. Judge Santos reviewed security footage on the courtroom's large monitor, and consecutive viewing made Patricia's behavior look absolutely unhinged. Midnight fence photography, ladder surveillance of family barbecues, obsessive property measurements with flashlights. The courtroom gallery gasped audibly at the surveillance obsession's extent. Mrs. Hernandez's testimony carried moral authority that silenced the room. She consistently made comments about those people and maintaining neighborhood standards, she stated with crystal clarity, always targeting families with work vehicles, never complaining about luxury boats or recreational equipment. Mr. Hudson's engineering precision demolished Patricia's property claims with mathematical certainty. Her driveway illegally encroaches 14 inches on city right-of-way, he testified. Complained about legal parking while violating municipal codes herself for 8 months. Officer Martinez confirmed the false report pattern with professional embarrassment. 3 separate emergency calls, all unfounded, all targeting the same family. Pattern suggests systematic harassment rather than legitimate safety concerns. Then came the surprise witness that drained Patricia's face whiter than courthouse marble. School District Attorney Jennifer Walsh appeared with subpoena requiring Patricia's testimony about ongoing professional conduct investigations. Ms. Whitmore, are you currently facing termination for discriminatory treatment of working-class families at your elementary school? The question hung in courtroom air like toxic fog. That's when Patricia's carefully constructed facade finally shattered into a million pieces. I was maintaining standards, she shrieked, voice hitting frequencies that made everyone flinch. Some people need to understand their place in decent neighborhoods. There are hierarchies for good reasons. The courtroom erupted as Patricia continued her meltdown, confessing to discriminatory targeting on live television. Working-class families bring down property values. Commercial vehicles don't belong in professional neighborhoods. I was protecting our community. Judge Santos banged her gavel repeatedly while TV cameras captured every word of Patricia's public admission to economic discrimination. Her attorney's face cycled through horror, resignation, and professional suicide as his client destroyed their defense in real time. Dr. Martinez's psychological evaluation confirmed what everyone now witnessed. Subject exhibits obsessive targeting behavior requiring immediate professional intervention and supervised community interaction. Tommy Reyes delivered the legal knockout punch with union authority. Targeting members' employment constitutes federal labor violations. This behavior threatens every working family's economic security and violates multiple civil rights statutes. Judge Santos's ruling landed with the finality of a courthouse earthquake. The evidence presents systematic harassment with clear discriminatory intent, she declared with steel in her voice. I'm granting comprehensive restraining order. No contact with plaintiff's family, no surveillance, no complaints without court approval, mandatory counseling, and $2,847 restitution for documented damages. The courtroom exploded in applause that Judge Santos allowed, recognizing community investment in justice. Furthermore, she continued, any violation will result in immediate criminal prosecution and contempt charges. Patricia's final act of defiance sealed her fate completely. Despite the fresh restraining order, she attempted approaching me outside the courthouse, screaming about people knowing their place. Court officers intervened immediately, slapping additional contempt charges on someone too unhinged to understand legal consequences. Ralph's courthouse steps press conference made regional news that evening. This victory protects every working family's right to peaceful enjoyment of their homes without economic intimidation or harassment. The school district announced Patricia's termination that afternoon, 20 years of career destroyed by one courthouse meltdown captured on live television. Our front yard block party that evening tasted like justice seasoned with community solidarity. Neighbors brought food, Local 90 donated pizza, and celebration felt like democracy, working exactly as intended. Patricia's for sale sign appeared 3 days later. Here's my mic drop moment. The woman who spent 4 months trying to teach me about knowing my place just learned that in America, working families who document everything and stand together can beat entitled bullies every single time. 6 months after our courthouse victory, Millbrook Heights had transformed into the peaceful sanctuary it was always meant to be. Morning air carried familiar scents of Mrs. Hernandez's Café con Leche and Mr. Hudson's blooming jasmine instead of toxic tension, while my cedar fence had become the neighborhood gold standard for tasteful property improvements. 3 families installed similar landscaping features, turning our street into a showcase of working-class pride and professional craftsmanship. The $2,847 restitution sparked an idea that made my mom Eleanor's spirit shine brighter than Connecticut sunrise. Combined with donations from Local 90 and neighbors who'd rallied around justice, we established the Eleanor Brennan Memorial Scholarship for working-class students pursuing technical education. The fund helps trade families' children afford vocational training, apprenticeships, and community college programs leading to solid middle-class careers. Mrs. Peterson attended our scholarship ceremony, tears streaming as she watched Patricia's court-ordered money transform into educational opportunity. Your mother would be so proud, she whispered with surprising strength, turning harassment restitution into children's futures. That's the most beautiful revenge imaginable. Patricia's departure happened swiftly and completely. 8 weeks post-termination, Dr. and Mrs. Patel, both Hartford Hospital physicians, moved into the renovated Victorian with homemade samosas and genuine respect for neighborhood working families. They specifically chose our street after hearing about community solidarity during the legal battle, wanting to raise children where neighbors actually support each other. My career flourished beyond wildest imagination. Pete Kowalski promoted me to senior crew chief, impressed by calm crisis management and documentation skills that now serve as company training material for employees facing workplace intimidation. Insurance providers use our case study to teach harassment resistance and legal preparation. Emma and Sophie learned invaluable lessons about civil rights, legal documentation, and community organization. Both excel academically while mentoring classmates facing harassment situations. Their high school presentations about constitutional protections have inspired peer support networks that school administrators now recommend for other districts. The Neighborhood Association unanimously elected me to focus on inclusive community standards, welcoming working families while preventing harassment through education and early intervention. My reputation for fair problem solving makes me the preferred mediator for disputes before they escalate into legal battles. Ralph's Connecticut Bar Journal article about our case helps law schools teach harassment recognition and civil rights enforcement. More importantly, I've guided 5 other union families through similar situations using strategies we developed during our 4-month battle, protecting working families from entitled bullies nationwide. Property values increased 15% due to professional improvements and problem neighbor resolution. The beautiful irony? Patricia's harassment campaign actually strengthened my financial position while destroying her career and forcing expensive relocation. Local 90 appointed me member advocate for harassment support, helping union families understand rights and legal options when facing economic intimidation. The role includes training and compensation, but real reward comes from protecting families who think paychecks determine human worth. Mr. Hudson and I converted an empty lot into neighborhood educational space where children learn gardening, electrical safety, and practical skills. Emma and Sophie coordinate teen volunteer programs that have become models for youth engagement in surrounding communities. The Conservation Project now hosts monthly workshops teaching sustainable living, home maintenance, and financial literacy. Practical knowledge that strengthens working families while building lasting community bonds. The sound of children's laughter mixing with power tools and garden sprinklers has replaced Patricia's harassment drama with productive neighborhood energy. 1 year later, our story represents proof that organized communities can defeat systematic harassment through proper documentation, legal preparation, and unwavering solidarity. Working families who stand together, know their rights, and refuse intimidation can overcome any entitled bully. Jessica Hudson's anniversary feature emphasizes positive transformation when communities support harassment victims and hold bad actors accountable through established legal systems rather than vigilante responses. Next week's explosive story. My neighbor sued me for stealing Amazon packages delivered to my address for 3 months. Security footage, postal regulations, and federal mail fraud laws taught him expensive lessons about reading addresses correctly. Share your HOA nightmares and neighbor harassment stories below. The more experiences we document, the better we help others recognize patterns and fight back legally. Your story could save another working family from months of intimidation. Subscribe and hit notifications because next week features a wannabe influencer who transformed my front yard into her personal photo studio without permission. Copyright law, property rights, and public humiliation deliver justice with viral social media consequences. Remember, document everything, understand your rights, build community support, and never let bullies win through intimidation. Working families deserve respect, dignity, and peaceful enjoyment of their homes. Justice tastes sweetest when served with neighborhood solidarity and legal precision. Thanks for watching, and see you next week for another victory story.